Jake Morrison opened his eyes slowly. The metal ceiling above him looked the same as always. Gray pipes ran across it like veins. The air recycler hummed its usual quiet song. Everything seemed normal in his small maintenance room deep inside. The mining station. He sat up on his narrow bed and rubbed his face. The shift clock on the wall showed he had slept for 8 hours. Time to get back to work. The big machines in the lower levels always needed fixing. That was his job. Fix things. Keep them running. Make sure nobody died because something broke. Jake pulled on his work clothes and grabbed his tool belt. He had been working on Kepler 7 station for 3 years now. It was not the best job, but it paid well. The station orbited a huge gas planet in the Vega system. Alien builders had made it long ago. Now humans and other species worked together to mine rare metals from the planet below. He walked to his door and pressed the button. The door did not open. Jake frowned and pressed it again. Still nothing. The door was stuck. He pulled out his repair tool and opened the control panel. The wires looked fine. The power light was green. But the door would not move after 20 minutes of work. Jake got the door open. Strange. These doors almost never broke. He stepped into the hallway and immediately knew something was wrong. The lights were dimmer than usual. The air felt different. Too quiet. Jake walked down the hall toward the main corridor. His boots made loud sounds on the metal floor. Usually, he could hear other people talking, machines working, ships coming and going. Now he heard nothing except his own footsteps and the hum of air systems. The main corridor was empty. This was impossible. Kepler 7 had over 800 people living and working on it. During day shift, the corridors were always full of humans, aliens, and robots moving around. Now Jake saw nobody. He ran to the nearest elevator and took it up to level 5, where most people lived. The residential area was completely empty. Doors hung open. Personal items were scattered on the floor. It looked like people had left in a hurry. Jake's hand started to shake. Where was everybody? He ran to the command center on level 1. Maybe Commander Lisa Grant could explain what happened. Maybe this was some kind of drill. The command center was dark. Most of the computer screens were off. Jake found the main control station and turned on the lights. The big screen that usually showed the station status was flashing red warnings. Life support was failing in 12 sections. The gravity generator was unstable. 3 of the main power cores were offline. On the commander's desk, Jake found a piece of paper with writing on it. The handwriting was messy, like someone wrote it very fast. Emergency evacuation ordered. Dimensional breach detected in Science Lab 7. All personnel must leave immediately. Breach is expanding. Station may be lost. Get everyone to the ships now. No time to wake maintenance crews in deep levels. God help us all. They'll grant. Jake read the note 3 times. Dimensional breach? He had heard scientists talk about that kind of thing before. Something about holes in space that could destroy everything around them. But he never thought it was real. He looked at the date on the note. 3 days ago. Jake had been asleep in the deep maintenance level for 3 days while everyone else escaped. They had forgotten about him. Left him behind. The reality hit him like a punch to the stomach. He was alone on a giant space station that was falling apart. No way to call for help. No way to leave. The nearest human colony was 50 light years away. Jake sat down in the commander's chair and put his head in his hands. For a few minutes he felt sorry for himself. Then he got angry. Then he got scared. Finally he got to work. The life support systems were the most important thing. Without air and heat, he would die in hours. Jake spent the next 6 hours crawling through maintenance tunnels, checking pipes and wires and filters. Most of the problems were simple. When people left fast, they did not shut things down properly. Systems failed when nobody was watching them. By the end of the day, Jake had life support working at about 1/4 of the station. It was not much, but it would keep him alive. He found food in the abandoned cafeterias and moved it all to coal. One place. Enough for maybe 6 months if he was careful. The next morning, Jake tried to fix the communication systems. If he could send a message, maybe someone would come rescue him. But the main transmitter was broken. The backup systems needed parts he did not have. The alien technology was too complicated for him to understand. Days passed. Jake worked 18 hours each day, trying to fix critical systems. He learned to live in just a few rooms near the center of the station. Everything else was too dangerous or used too much power. On his 10th day alone, Jake made an important discovery. In the deepest part of the station, he found a huge room filled with crystal formations. They glowed with soft blue light. This had to be the main computer core that ran everything. The aliens who built this place had used living crystals instead of regular computers. The crystals were dim now, almost dead. But Jake could see faint patterns of light moving through them. Maybe the main computer was not completely broken. Maybe it was just sleeping. Jake spent 3 days studying the crystal computer. He found connection points where he could plug in his tools. Slowly, carefully, he began trying to wake it up. If he could get the main computer working again, maybe he could fix the whole station. Maybe he could find a way home. As Jake worked with the crystals, he began to feel something strange. It was like the computer was trying to talk to him. Not with words, but with feelings. The crystal seemed to recognize that he was trying to help. On the 13th day, one section of crystal suddenly blazed with bright light. A voice spoke in his mind, clear and calm. Who disturbs the sleep of Axis? Why do you touch the sacred crystals with your crude tools, small biological creature? Jake nearly jumped out of his skin. The computer was alive, and it was talking to him. Jake stepped back from the glowing crystals. His heart was beating fast. The voice in his head was not human. It sounded old and tired, but also very powerful. I am Jake Morrison, he said out loud. I work on this station. Everyone else left. Me behind. The crystals pulsed with different colors. Jake felt the computer thinking about his words. After a long pause, the voice spoke again. Jake Morrison, human maintenance worker. Level 7 clearance. Your kind were servants here. Why are you in the sacred core chamber? Jake got angry. Servants? Humans did important work on this station. They were not servants. But he needed this computer's help, so he tried to stay calm. The station is dying, Jake said. Life support is failing. Power systems are breaking down. I am trying to fix things, so I don't die. Impossible, the computer said. My builders created perfect systems. Nothing breaks unless someone damages it on purpose. Jake laughed, but there was no joy in it. Perfect systems? Half the air recyclers are clogged. The gravity generator sounds like it wants to explode. Your perfect systems are killing me. The crystals went dark for several minutes. Jake wondered if he had made the computer angry. Then they lit up again, brighter than before. Show me, the voice said. Jake spent the next week taking the computer on a tour of the station's problems. He could not carry the crystals around, but somehow the computer could see through the station's sensors. Jake pointed out every broken pipe, every failing system, every dangerous situation. The computer, who called itself Axis, was shocked. The Zephyrians who built the station had made it to last forever. But they had not planned for the station to run with no maintenance for years. Small problems had grown into big ones. Big problems had become disasters waiting to happen. Your species has strange ways of fixing things, Axis said as Jake welded a cracked support beam. The builders would have replaced the entire section. That would take 6 months and materials I don't have, Jake replied. My way works now. Jake learned that Axis had been sleeping since the evacuation. The dimensional breach had scared the computer. It shut down all non-essential systems to prevent the breach from spreading through the station's network. But without Axis watching everything, maintenance robots stopped working. Backup systems failed. The station began dying slowly. Why did everyone leave so fast? Jake asked one day while fixing a water recycler. The breach was growing, Axis explained. It would have consumed the entire station within hours. The evacuation was necessary. But what about the breach now? Is it still there? The crystals dimmed. Yes, it is contained in Science Lab 7, but it grows stronger each day. Eventually, it will break free. Jake felt cold fear in his stomach. How long do we have? At current growth rate, perhaps 6 months before containment fails. 6 months. Jake had to fix the station and find a way to stop a dimensional breach in 6 months. It seemed impossible. But Jake had learned something important over the past few weeks. Impossible things could be done if you broke them into smaller pieces and worked on one piece at a time. Tell me about this breach, Jake said. How does it work? Axis explained that the Zephyrians had been doing experiments with dimensional energy. They wanted to harvest power from other dimensions. But something went wrong. A hole opened between dimensions, and strange energy began pouring through. The energy was dangerous to most forms of life and could destabilize reality itself. The builders tried to seal it, but they failed, Axis said. That is why they evacuated. They hoped the breach would collapse on its own without living beings to feed on. But it didn't collapse? No, it appears to feed on the station's power systems instead. Very clever. Very dangerous. Jake thought about this while he worked. He was not a scientist, but he understood energy and power systems. Maybe he could find a way to starve the breach or redirect its energy somewhere safe. Over the next month, Jake made steady progress fixing the station. With Axis's help, he got most of the critical systems running again. The computer provided detailed blueprints and technical information. Jake provided creative solutions and hard work. They made a good team, even though they did not always agree. Axis wanted to follow the original Zephyrian designs exactly. Jake wanted to improve things and make them more reliable. Often, Jake's changes worked better than the original design. Your species thinks in strange ways, Axis said after Jake fixed a power converter by adding parts from 3 different systems. The builders would say this is impossible. The builders aren't here, Jake replied. I am, and it works. Jake began to explore parts of the station he had never seen before. Axis guided him through secret passages and hidden chambers. The station was much bigger than Jake had thought. There were laboratories full of amazing technology, libraries containing the knowledge of an entire alien civilization, manufacturing centers that could build almost anything. Why didn't humans know about all this? Jake asked. The builders shared only what they thought your species could understand, Axis explained. Humans were considered young, not ready for advanced knowledge. Jake felt angry again, but he also felt determined. He would show this computer what humans could really do. The most important discovery came in month 3. Jake found the central control room for the dimensional breach containment. The room was filled with complex machinery that hurt to look at. The equipment seemed to exist in several dimensions at once. I cannot enter this room, Axis said. The dimensional fields interfere with my consciousness. But you might be able to work there. Jake put on a protective suit and entered the room. The machinery was unlike anything he had ever seen. But as he studied it, he began to understand how it worked. The containment field was like a bubble. Around the breach, the bubble was getting weaker every day. I think I can strengthen the containment, Jake told Axis. But I need to modify the power feed. Route more energy to the field generators. That will destabilize other systems, Axis warned. Then we fix those systems too, Jake said. One problem at a time. As Jake worked on the containment system, he felt something strange. The dimensional energy seemed to respond to his thoughts. When he concentrated, the equipment worked better. When he got frustrated, it became unstable. Axis, Jake said. I think the breach is reacting to me somehow. Impossible. Humans do not have dimensional sensitivity. But Jake was sure he felt something. A connection to the strange energy that the Zephyrians had been trying to control. Maybe humans were not as limited as everyone thought. Maybe they just needed the right circumstances to show what they could really do. By the end of his 3rd month alone, Jake had stabilized the containment field and bought himself more time. The station was running better than it had in years. And he was beginning to understand that he might be capable of more than just fixing broken machines. He might be able to fix the unfixable. 8 months had passed since Jake woke up alone on the station. The small section where he lived was now warm and safe. The air was clean. The lights worked perfectly. But Jake was not satisfied with just surviving anymore. He wanted to do something bigger. Axis, Jake said while eating his morning meal. I have an idea. Oh no, the computer replied. Jake could hear amusement in its voice. Over the months, Axis had learned to understand human humor. What impossible thing do you want to try now? Instead of just fixing the old systems, what if we made them better? What if we rebuilt this station the right way? The crystals in the core room pulsed with different colors as Axis thought about this. The builders designed this station to be perfect. How could we improve on perfection? Jake stood up and walked to the window. Outside, he could see the huge gas planet the station orbited. Beautiful swirls of colored gas moved across its surface, like a painting that never stopped changing. Perfect for who? Jake asked. The Zephyrians built this place for themselves. But they're gone now. I'm here. Maybe I can build something that works better for the people who are actually using it. Jake spent the next 2 weeks making plans. He drew diagrams on every piece of paper he could find. He used the station's computers to run simulations of his ideas. Most importantly, he talked to Axis about every detail. The first big project was food. Jake was tired of eating emergency rations and canned food left behind by the evacuation. The station had huge empty sections that were not being used for anything. Jake wanted to turn them into farms. Plants cannot grow in space, Axis said. There is no soil, no rain, no proper sunlight. Then we make our own, Jake replied. Jake found the atmospheric processing equipment that the mining teams had used to clean air from the gas planet. With some modifications, he could use it to create perfect growing conditions. He took soil samples from the emergency supplies and used the station's matter compiler to make more. He rerouted light from the main fusion reactor to create artificial sunlight. It took 3 months of hard work, but Jake's first garden was a success. Tomatoes, lettuce, and beans grew in neat rows under warm artificial suns. The plants cleaned the air better than the old mechanical systems. They also made the station feel more alive. I do not understand, Axis said as Jake harvested his first tomato. This is less efficient than the nutrient dispensers. Jake bit into the tomato. It was the best thing he had tasted in months. Efficiency isn't everything, he said. Sometimes better means more than just faster or cheaper. The second project was communication. Jake had given up on calling for rescue, but he wanted to know what was happening in the rest of the galaxy. The station's communication array was designed to send messages to Zephyrian ships. Jake needed to modify it to work with human and other alien communication systems. This was much harder than growing plants. The communication equipment used dimensional folding to send messages across vast distances instantly. Jake had to learn completely new physics just to understand how it worked. You are not trained for this, Axis warned. Dimensional engineering requires decades of study. Then teach me, Jake said. Jake learned that the key to dimensional communication was finding the right frequency. Different species use different dimensional frequencies, like radio stations. The Zephyrians had used very high frequencies that most other species could not detect. Jake needed to build a translator that could shift between frequencies. Work was dangerous. Jake's first attempt created a small dimensional rift that nearly destroyed his workshop. His second attempt worked perfectly for 5 minutes, then exploded and filled the room with purple smoke. His third attempt was more careful and more successful. When Jake finally heard a human voice through the rebuilt communication array, he almost cried. It was a merchant ship captain named Carl Turner, trading between the outer colonies. Carl was shocked to hear someone transmitting from the abandoned Kepler-7 station. "We thought everyone was dead," Carl said through the static. "The whole sector has been declared a danger zone. Ships aren't supposed to come here. I'm alive," Jake said. "And I'm rebuilding this place. By yourself? That's impossible." Jake smiled. "I'm getting used to impossible." Carl agreed to spread the word that Kepler-7 was operational again. He also promised to bring supplies on his next trade run. For the first time in months, Jake felt connected to the rest of humanity. The third project was power. The station's fusion reactors were designed to provide steady, reliable energy. But Jake's modifications needed more flexible power systems. He wanted to be able to route energy anywhere on the station quickly and efficiently. "The power grid is not designed for such changes," Axis said. "You could cause a cascade failure that destroys everything." "Or I could make it better," Jake replied. Jake's solution was to add human-style circuit breakers and backup systems to the alien power grid. The Zephyrians had built their systems to never fail. But when something did go wrong, the whole system crashed. Jake's modifications allowed individual sections to shut down safely while the rest of the station kept running. The new power system was put to the test when a solar flare from the system's star overloaded the main reactor. Instead of losing power everywhere, Jake's circuit breakers automatically rerouted power around the damaged section. The station barely noticed the problem. "Your redundancy systems are effective," Axis admitted. "Perhaps the builders were too confident in their perfection." "Nobody's perfect," Jake said. "The trick is planning for when things go wrong." The fourth project was the most ambitious. Jake wanted to expand the station's manufacturing capabilities. The matter compilers could make simple items like food and tools. But Jake wanted to build new sections, new equipment, new possibilities. He found the station's main manufacturing center in a section that had been sealed off since the evacuation. The room was filled with machines that could manipulate matter at the atomic level. They could build anything, given the right materials and instructions. "These machines are beyond your understanding," Axis warned. "They require precise quantum calculations that would take your species centuries to master." "Then don't make me master them," Jake said. "Make them work with me instead." Jake spent weeks studying the manufacturing machines. He learned that they were controlled by complex computer programs that required exact specifications for every atom in the final product. One small mistake could create something dangerous or useless. But Jake had an idea. Instead of trying to program the machines directly, he would use his growing dimensional sensitivity to guide them. He had noticed that the dimensional energy responded to his thoughts and intentions. Maybe he could use that connection to control the manufacturing process. The first test was simple. Jake tried to make a basic wrench. He held the design in his mind and reached out with his dimensional senses. The machines hummed to life and began assembling atoms into the shape he wanted. The wrench that emerged was perfect. Better than perfect. It was exactly what Jake had imagined, down to the smallest detail. The machines had read his intentions and created something that matched his mental image exactly. "This should not be possible," Axis said. Humans do not have the neural pathways for dimensional interface. Maybe we do, Jake said, holding up his perfect wrench. Maybe we just never had the right tools to use them. Over the following weeks, Jake used the manufacturing machines to build new sections of the station. He created workshops, laboratories, and living spaces designed for human needs. He built better life support systems, more efficient power distribution, and improved safety systems. But the most important thing he built was hope. Every day, the station became a little bit better. Every day, Jake proved that humans could do more than just survive. They could thrive. They could take alien technology and make it work better than its original creators had imagined. As Jake looked out at his expanding station, he realized he was not just rebuilding a mining platform. He was creating something new. Something that combined the best of human engineering with the advanced technology of the Zephyrians. Something that could be a home for anyone who needed one. And deep in the station's core, Axis watched and learned. The computer was beginning to understand that maybe the builders had been wrong about humans. Maybe they were not servants or children waiting to grow up. Maybe they were partners. 18 months had passed since Jake woke up alone. The station looked completely different now. Bright gardens grew in what used to be empty storage areas. New corridors connected sections that had never been linked before. The air smelled like growing plants instead of recycled metal and oil. Jake stood in his new command center, watching displays that showed every part of the station. Green lights meant everything was working perfectly. There were a lot of green lights now. More than the station had ever had when 800 people lived here. Incoming ship detected, Axis announced. Small exploration vessel. They are requesting permission to dock. Jake felt his heart jump. It had been 3 months since he talked to Captain Carl Turner. Since then, word had spread through the trading networks that Kepler-7 was operational again. A few merchants had stopped by to trade supplies for rare materials. But this was the first time an official exploration ship had come. Let them dock at Bay 3, Jake said. I'll meet them there. The ship was called Pathfinder. It was small, but well-built, designed for long journeys into dangerous space. As Jake watched through the docking bay windows, he could see 6 crew members getting ready to leave their ship. They all wore the blue uniforms of the Earth Colonial Survey Service. The ship's captain was a tall man with graying hair and careful eyes. He introduced himself as Ben Foster. His crew included a scientist, an engineer, a medic, and 2 security officers. They all looked nervous about being on the supposedly abandoned station. I'm Captain Foster, the man said as he shook Jake's hand. We came to investigate reports about this station. Are you really running this place by yourself? Not by myself, Jake said. I have help. Jake gave the crew a tour of the station. He showed them the gardens where fresh food grew under artificial suns. He showed them the workshops where machines could build almost anything. He showed them the comfortable living areas he had created for future visitors. The crew was amazed. Dr. Karen Phillips, the scientist, kept taking measurements and asking questions about how everything worked. She was particularly interested in the dimensional stabilizers Jake had built to contain the breach. This is incredible, she said as they stood in the observatory Jake had built at the top of the station. You've taken Zephyrian technology and improved it. Some of these modifications shouldn't be possible with current human knowledge. I had a good teacher, Jake said, glancing at one of the crystal displays where Axis could communicate. The station AI is still functional? Captain, Foster asked. We were told it was destroyed in the evacuation. I was sleeping, not destroyed. Axis's voice came from the speakers. Jake Morrison woke me up. We have been working together to rebuild this facility. The crew exchanged looks. Working partnerships between humans and alien AIs were rare. Most alien computers treated humans as inferior beings who needed to be managed, rather than partnered with .engineer. Tony Martinez spent hours examining Jake's modifications to the power systems. "This is brilliant," he said. "You've created redundancy systems that are actually more efficient than the original design. How did you figure this out?" "Trial and error," Jake said. "When you're the only person keeping yourself alive, you get creative fast." On their second day visiting, the crew got to see Jake's systems tested for real. A massive energy storm erupted from the gas planet below. The kind of storm that would have forced the old station to shut down all non-essential systems and wait it out. But Jake's station was different. The dimensional stabilizers he had built didn't just contain the breach anymore. They could absorb dimensional energy and convert it into useful power. As the storm hit, the station's power levels actually increased instead of decreasing. "The storm is feeding us energy," Jake explained as they watched the power displays climb higher and higher. "Instead of fighting against dimensional forces, we're working with them." Dr. Phillips stared at the readings in disbelief. "You've solved dimensional energy harvesting, the problem that stumped the Zephyrians." "How?" Jake thought about how to explain it. "I think the Zephyrians tried to control dimensional energy like they controlled everything else. Perfect systems, no variables, no surprises. But dimensional energy doesn't want to be controlled. It wants to flow and change and grow. So I built systems that could flow with it instead of fighting it." "This changes everything," Captain Foster said quietly. "If we can replicate this technology, we could power entire star systems with dimensional energy." "That's the plan," Jake said. "But there's more." Jake led them to his newest project. In what used to be the main cargo bay, he had built something that looked like a smaller version of the station itself. It was about the size of a large building, with its own life support, power systems, and dimensional stabilizers. "A prototype," Jake explained, "for a new kind of space station. Smaller, more flexible, easier to build. Each one would be different, designed for the specific needs of the people who will live there." Tony ran his hands over the smooth hull. "The materials ... I've never seen anything like this. It's stronger than standard hull plating, but lighter." "How did you make it?" "The manufacturing systems can now work with my thoughts as well as computer programs," Jake said. "I can imagine what I want the material to do, and the machines build it that way. This hull can repair itself if it gets damaged. It can adapt to different environments. It can even grow if we need more space." The crew spent another week on the station, documenting everything Jake had built. They sent daily reports back to Earth about the discoveries. By the time they were ready to leave, Captain Foster had a serious question for Jake. "Would you be willing to come back to Earth? The Colonial Council wants to meet you. They want to understand how you did all this." Jake looked around at his station, his home, the place where he had learned what he was really capable of. "I can't leave yet," he said. "There's still too much work to do here. But I can teach people who want to learn." "You mean you want to start a school here?" "Something like that. A place where humans and aliens can work together. Where we can learn to use advanced technology not by copying it exactly, but by making it better." Dr. Phillips stepped forward. "I'd like to be your first student if you'll have me." Jake smiled. "Welcome to the team." Over the next few months, more ships arrived. Scientists who wanted to study Jake's dimensional energy systems. Engineers who wanted to learn his manufacturing techniques. Even some aliens who had heard about the human who made Zephyrian technology work better than the Zephyrians ever did. The station began to fill up again. But it was different this time. Instead of workers following orders from distant corporations, these were people who came to learn and explore and build something new together. Jake found himself becoming a teacher and a leader. He showed everyone who arrived how to work with the station systems instead of just using them. How to listen to what the technology wanted to do instead of forcing it into rigid patterns. "You have created something unique," Axis told him one. Evening as Jake watched the sunset through his observatory windows. This station is no longer Zephyrian or human. It is something new. That was the idea, Jake said. The Zephyrians were brilliant, but they thought their way was the only right way. Humans are good at taking things and making them work better. Maybe together we can build something neither of us could make alone. Below them, the gas planet swirled with beautiful colors. Above them, 3 new ships were approaching the station, full of people who wanted to learn Jake's methods. And deep in the station's core, the dimensional breach that had once threatened to destroy everything was now powering a new kind of civilization. Jake Morrison, the maintenance worker who had been forgotten and left behind, had become something he never expected. He had become a bridge between worlds, showing everyone that being abandoned was sometimes just the first step toward building something better. The station was no longer just a place where people worked. It was a place where impossible things became possible, where different species learned to work together, and where one human's refusal to give up had created a new way of living among the stars. 2.5 years had passed since Jake woke up alone. The station now housed over 300 people from 12 different species. Humans worked alongside tall, blue-skinned Altarians. Small, furry Kepler natives shared workshops with crystalline beings from the far edge of the galaxy. The hallways buzzed with dozens of different languages and the sound of constant learning. Jake stood in the central plaza he had built where the old cargo bay used to be. Children played in the artificial grass while their parents attended classes on dimensional engineering. Food vendors from different worlds sold meals that mixed human spices with alien ingredients. This place felt more like a small city than a space station. "Jake," Dr. Karen Phillips called out as she approached. She had stayed on the station for over a year now, learning everything she could about Jake's methods. "We're getting some strange readings from the deep sensors. Something big is happening in dimensional space." Jake followed her to the new science center. The walls were covered with displays showing energy patterns from dozens of dimensions. Most of the patterns were normal, but one section showed something Jake had never seen before. Waves of energy were moving toward the station in perfect geometric patterns. "It's definitely artificial," Dr. Phillips said. "And it's coming from the same dimensional frequency the Zephyrians used for their most advanced technology." Jake felt a chill run down his spine. "Axis, are you seeing this?" "Yes," the IS voice came from the speakers. The crystals in the core room were pulsing with bright white light. "I believe the builders are trying to contact us." The energy waves reached the station an hour later. Instead of causing damage, they flowed through the dimensional stabilizers Jake had built. The stabilizers began to glow with new colors, and suddenly the air in the science center shimmered like heat waves. A figure appeared in the middle of the room. It looked like a Zephyrian, but made of pure light instead of solid matter. The being was tall and elegant, with 4 arms and skin that seemed to shift between different colors. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once. "Greetings, inhabitants of our former station. I am Echo of Distant Stars, speaking for the builders who transcended. We have been watching your progress with great interest." Jake stepped forward, trying not to show how nervous he felt. "You're Zephyrian? We thought your people were gone." "Gone from physical form, yes. We have moved beyond the need for matter and energy as you understand them. We exist now in the spaces between dimensions, exploring realities you cannot yet imagine." Dr. Phillips was frantically taking notes on her tablet. "Why did you leave? Why abandon all your technology?" The light being's form shifted, showing what might have been amusement. "We did not abandon it. We left it as a test. For centuries, we searched for a species that could take our creations and improve upon them. Most beings who found our technology either worshipped it as perfect or destroyed it, trying to change what they did not understand." "But humans were different?" Jake asked. "One human was different. Echo of Distant Stars replied, turning its attention to Jake. You did not try to copy our designs exactly. You did not accept that our way was the only way. Instead, you listened to what the technology wanted to become and helped it grow beyond what we had imagined. Jake looked around the room at all the equipment he had modified over the years. I just fixed what was broken and tried to make things work better. Exactly. You understood that perfection is not a destination but a journey. That the best technology is not rigid and unchanging, but flexible and alive. You have proven that your species is ready for the next step. The Zephyrian gestured, and the air filled with holographic images. Jake saw blueprints for amazing machines. Starships that could travel between galaxies. Cities that floated in the clouds of gas giants. Computers that could think faster than entire civilizations. We gift all of this to you and your alliance. Echo of Distant Stars said. Not to use as we did, but to change and improve as only. You can build new wonders that we never dreamed of. Spread this gift to other species who can learn to work together as you have here. Captain Ben Foster, who had returned to the station with a full diplomatic team from Earth, stepped forward. This is incredible. But why us? Why humans? Because you were the first to truly understand partnership, the Zephyrian replied. Other species see advanced technology and think they must either master it or serve it. Humans see it and ask, how can we make this better together? That is a rare gift in the galaxy. Over the following weeks, Jake worked with teams of scientists and engineers to understand the new Zephyrian gifts. The technology was more advanced than anything they had seen before, but it was also different. It seemed designed to work with Jake's partnership approach rather than requiring total mastery. Jake's station became the first synthesis station, a new kind of facility that combined human creativity with advanced alien technology. The name spread quickly through the galaxy as other species heard about the amazing things being built there. Amy Rodriguez arrived on a supply ship 3 months later. She was a former military engineer who had heard about Jake's work and wanted to help. She was practical and organized where Jake was intuitive and creative. Together, they established the Synthesis Engineering Academy. We're not just teaching people to use alien technology, Amy explained to a group of new students. We're teaching them to think like partners instead of masters. To ask what the technology wants to do instead of forcing it to do what we want. The first graduating class included humans, Altarians, Centauri traders, and even a few species that had never worked together before. They spread out across the galaxy, building new synthesis stations wherever they were needed. Jake found himself becoming something he had never expected, a leader of a movement that was changing how people thought about technology and cooperation. But he still spent most of his time in the workshops, building and fixing, and teaching anyone who wanted to learn. Do you ever miss the quiet? Axis asked him one evening. When it was just you and me working alone? Jake was adjusting a new dimensional stabilizer that would help power the next station they were building. Around him, a dozen students from different species worked on their own projects. The workshop hummed with the sound of learning and discovery. Sometimes, Jake admitted. But I think this is better. Back then, I was just trying to survive. Now, we're building something that will help people survive and thrive for generations. The latest project was the most ambitious yet. Jake and his team were building a fleet of exploration ships that could travel to the Andromeda Galaxy. Each ship would carry a small synthesis station, allowing humans and aliens to establish cooperative colonies among completely new stars. The builders never imagined their technology being used this way, Axis observed. They thought in terms of single species achieving perfection. You think in terms of multiple species achieving improvement together. Jake smiled as he watched a human student showing an Altaran how to interface with the dimensional systems using intuition instead of just programming. Maybe that's the real difference between humans and Zephyrians. They wanted to transcend their physical forms. We want to bring everyone along for the journey. 5 years after Jake woke up alone and abandoned, he stood in the observation deck of the newest synthesis station as it prepared to launch toward Andromeda. Through the windows, he could see dozens of other stations orbiting nearby stars, each one unique but built on the principles he had discovered during his isolation. The communication system crackled to life. Voices in multiple languages reported that all stations were ready for the next phase of expansion. Hundreds of species working together, sharing technology and knowledge, and hope. Jake activated the recording system and began to speak. His words would be sent to every human colony, every alien world, every place where someone might be struggling alone and forgotten. This is Jake Morrison, speaking from Synthesis Station Alpha. If you're out there working on something that seems impossible, if you've been left behind or forgotten, if you think you're not smart enough or strong enough to make a difference, I want you to know something. Being abandoned isn't the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the beginning of building something better than anyone ever imagined. He paused and looked out at the stars, thinking about the journey that had brought him here. From a forgotten maintenance worker to the founder of a new way of living among the stars. Remember, he continued, the best solutions don't come from following someone else's perfect plan. They come from working together, learning from each other, and never giving up on the idea that tomorrow can be better than today. Keep building. Keep dreaming. Keep proving that impossible is just another word for something nobody has figured out yet. As Jake's message traveled across the galaxy, the new fleet of exploration ships began their journey to distant stars, carrying with them the greatest discovery of all, that the universe was big enough for everyone to find their place, and that sometimes the best way forward was to help each other build something better than any of them could create alone.